From Manila to the globe, this is World Newsfeed, bringing you the biggest stories shaping our times. Good morning, I'm Raine Musñgi. Let's dive into the headlines making a global impact. The new leader in Syria warns anyone involved in the torture or killing of detainees during the ousted Syrian president's rule that they would be hunted down and pardons were out of the question. This comes as Syrian scours Cignal prison for a fourth day Wednesday, relatives hoping to find signs of life from dozens of other Syrians detained during the Assad regime. But they all seem to have disappeared. Golani, whose former al-Qaeda affiliate Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is now the country's main commander of the fighters who toppled Bashar al-Assad, he is seeking to balance demands for justice from victims with the need to prevent violent reprisals and secure international aid. Prime Minister Mohammed al-Bashir, the man installed by Golani's fighters to lead an interim administration, said he aimed to bring back millions of refugees, create unity, and provide basic services. He says rebuilding would be daunting with little funding on hand. The civil war has reduced cities to ruins, depopulated the countryside, and left the economy gutted by international sanctions. More than 2,500 Syrians have crossed from Turkey back to Syria in the last 3 days following the overthrow of al-Assad on Sunday. Millions of refugees still live in camps after one of the biggest displacements of modern times. The world is carefully watching to see if Syria's new rulers can stabilize the country and avoid unleashing violent revenge after the Assad family's decades-long oppressive rule and a 13-year civil war fought along sectarian and ethnic lines destroyed the country. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is headed to the Middle East for talks on Syria, in Jordan, and Turkey. The United States says it welcomes recent comments made by the Syrian rebel leader about securing potential chemical weapons sites, but would wait to see what actions are taken.
We welcome this type of rhetoric, but actions have to meet words as well.
Meanwhile, the Swiss government says there are currently $112 million worth of frozen Syrian assets in Switzerland. Their State Secretariat for Economic Affairs said some 87 entities and 318 individuals are on the sanctions list, with 3 more individuals added this week. Swiss financial institutions once held blocked Syrian assets worth $147 million, with the bulk of the total having been frozen since Switzerland adopted European Union sanctions against Syria in May 2011. Syrian residents expressed their aspirations for peace and equality as the country embarks on a new future, a new chapter following the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad. Others wish for no external interference and inclusive governance. In Hasaka, Syrian Democratic Forces fighters were seen in various locations.
We in this area here, as Kurds, Arabs, and other groups, hope that the new arriving will take every matter into account and ensure that everyone receive their rights. If they fail to recognize people's rights, they will fall just like the previous ones did.
We hope the upcoming period brings goodness and peace to this country. Enough bloodshed in the streets and over personal beliefs and ideologies. We also hope the first positive step for the country to be the separation of religion from the state, with religion on its own and politics and the state on their own, not intertwined and having, in the name of Islam, exclusion or marginalization of other religions or races.
Well, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres sees signs of hope in Syria following the overthrow of al-Assad by rebel forces over the weekend. After meeting South African Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola in the capital Pretoria, Guterres said the United Nations was committed to a smooth transition of power in Syria.
As we speak, we are witnessing the reshaping of the Middle East, with changes in the correlation of forces among the key regional actors, with the immense tragedy of the Palestinian people, whose right for self-determination and whose right to have their own state must be constantly reaffirmed. But we also see some signs of hope, and signs of hope namely coming from the end of the Syrian dictatorship. The UN is totally committed to supporting a smooth transition of power with an inclusive political process in which the rights of all minorities will be fully respected, and paving the way towards a united, sovereign Syria with its territorial integrity fully re-established.
Spanish Foreign Minister José Luis Alvarez believes the international community needs to establish several red lines in any talks with the new Syrian leadership and consider sanctions to ensure a peaceful future for the country. At the Reuters Next conference in New York, Alvarez called for caution and a debate on whether to remove Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the faction that led the rebel operation that overthrew al-Assad, from the list of terror groups after an initial round of talks. Alvarez also urged all sides in neighboring countries such as Israel, which has struck targets in Syria in the past few days, to show restraint so as not to fragment or further destabilize Syria.
Definitely the debate of sanctions is at the table. Sanctions, at least for European Union countries, come either from Security Council resolutions or through decisions that we take in Brussels. There are several red lines, or at least very clear topics that we must put at the table immediately if they want to engage with us. First of all is that the future of Syria must be peaceful, and therefore we should see what is so far a military movement to be transformed into a political movement. Secondly, the future of Syria must be peaceful, inclusive, and respecting the rights of minorities. I understand the legitimate concerns of Israel concerning Syria, and of course, the fact that there can be weapons of massive destruction, like chemical weapons, for instance, is an unacceptable threat to anyone, and an unacceptable threat to Israel. But in this very moment, I think everyone must show restraint. The risk of fragmenting or destabilizing Syria is very serious at this very moment. And Syria is a big country with a lot of influence in other already destabilized countries. We must show restraint.
Well, still on the Israel-Palestine conflict, Alvarez reiterated that a two-state solution remains the only viable path to peace. He also noted that only Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is actively pursuing peace, while the Russians show no willingness to negotiate, and that the debate over Ukraine joining NATO is secondary, as the focus is on helping the country win the war. When we come back, an update from Asia and the U.S. Keep it here on BNC for your World Newsfeed.
This is The Scorecard,
where you score the latest sports news
and in-depth views. I'm Anton Rojas.
I'm Erica Christensen.
Get ready. Be prepared. Get to the latest stories, updates, and reports about what's happening in the world of sports. Hosted by Anton Rojas, Erica Christensen.
Where sports is our business and business is our sport.
The Scorecard, 9:30 p.m. on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Magandang araw, Pilipinas!
Sa bawat issue may iba't ibang anggulo. Sa bawat storya may iba't ibang kwento.
Himayin natin ang bawat sulok at bawat kanto mula sa iba't ibang perspektibo na madaling maintindihan ng karaniwang mamamayan.
Every Saturday na mga magdadaan to 11:30 a.m. Kaya huwag kayong papahuli mga kabayan. Manatiling may pakialam sa mga issue sa ating bansa. Kaya samahan niyo kami dito lang sa Cuatro Cantos!
We're very unique with our concept. So with like a usual video game, you normally like log in to the game and you have this virtual world. In this scenario, we have a game client where, you know, the drivers, the players, gamers they log in, but this actually logs them into the real world. So literally, we're actually using a real racetrack. And then you're using real cars, which are scaled cars. We use 1/7 scale vehicles. So we work with real world physics. You know, like if you hit the wall, the car gets damaged. And in a video game, it's so easy to just press restart.
Right.
And you don't feel those consequences. So there are some negative feedback here without obviously the driver getting hurt, but I see it as being like a better training tool because it teaches you like to be patient. It makes you realize like, oh, I can't just thrash around my car like you would in the real world because it could get damaged or I could get hurt.
Welcome back. Going to Gaza now. Israeli airstrikes across the Strip killed at least 38 Palestinians on Wednesday. Medics said most of the fatalities came from a strike in a house in Beit Lahia on the northern edge of the enclave. Relatives listed the names of the dead on social media. Palestinian Wafa news agency said more than 30 people were living in the multi-story building before it was struck. Several family members remain missing as rescue operations continued through the morning. The Israeli military described the number of fatalities reported by Palestinian medics and media as inaccurate. They told Reuters that they had carried out 2 separate airstrikes targeting Hamas militants, killing 2 senior armed Hamas commanders who had taken a lead role in the October 7, 2023 cross-border attack on Israel that triggered the war. Taiwan demanded Wednesday that China end its ongoing military activity in nearby waters. Taiwan's foreign ministry said in a statement on its website that it was responding in part to the activities of a large number of Chinese ships in the first island chain that are unilaterally undermining peace and stability and disrupting international shipping and trade. Taiwan's military detected Chinese ships since Monday, both off Taiwan and farther out along the Pacific archipelago, off the Asian continental mainland that includes Japan, Taiwan, and part of the Philippines. An analyst said the participation of the Coast Guard, which also took part in drills in May and October, is new this year and part of a blockade scenario in which the Chinese Coast Guard would block Taiwan's ports while the Navy would form an outer barrier out at sea. Taiwan's military had been expecting drills following stops by its president Lai Ching-te in Hawaii and the U.S. territory of Guam. During an overseas trip last week, China claims self-governing Taiwan and its territories and opposes any official contact with America and other foreign governments. The gun found on the suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO matched shell casings found at the site of the shooting. New York City police said Wednesday suspect Luigi Mangioni's fingerprints also matched a water bottle and a snack bar wrapper that police found near the scene in Midtown Manhattan. Mangioni was charged with murder in last week's shooting of Brian Thompson, who led the United States' largest medical insurance company. Authorities have said that writings found in Mangioni's possession hinted at a hatred or corporate greed. Mangioni was denied bail for the second time and intends to fight his extradition to New York to face murder charges from Pennsylvania. He faces gun and forgery charges in that state and was arraigned in Altoona on Monday. An arrest warrant for Mangioni filed in a Manhattan criminal court listed 1 count of second-degree murder, 3 counts of criminal possession of a weapon, and 1 count of criminal possession of a forged instrument. Well, healthcare companies are taking a step back to better understand patients' experiences after a top U.S. health insurance executive was murdered last week. Executives from drug maker Pfizer and Amazon.com spoke at a panel in New York on Wednesday, the murder igniting an outpouring of anger online from Americans struggling to receive and pay for medical care. The New York Times reported that an internal New York City police report analyzing the document concluded that suspect Luigi Mangioni viewed the killing of the United Health CEO as a justified response to what he believed to be corruption in the healthcare industry. Recent data show that patients are increasingly likely to have their claims denied, pay more for premiums and medical visits, and face unexpected costs for care they thought was covered by their health plan. Insurers say they work to negotiate down increased fees from doctors and hospitals, as well as costly prescription drugs and medical devices.
Our health system needs to be better. I think we all agree on that. And there's a lot of things that, for decades, this is not new to the events of last week, which, horrifically tragic. There's a lot of things that should cause a lot of outrage by many of us. That's why we're building what we're building at Amazon, because we think that we can be part of a better solution. So there's a lot of inspiration and frankly, motivation out there to have a better system in place. And I think we're seeing the signs of that. It's also true that that should not have happened. And so there cannot be this false moral equivalence in our public discourse. And so I found, again, just me looking at this as an intensive care doc, seeing some of these inequities play out, not just over the last week, but over the last several decades, that the events of last week are unacceptable. I'm worried about, when you talk about risk, I think we should all be worried about this sort of notion, will that be normed? Is that type of reaction going to be normed, and are there going to be copycats? That is unacceptable. We need people to speak out that false moral equivalences must not be accepted. But that we should also be focused, as Carolyn said, on the bigger goal, which is we can do something better here together. That's why I know Carolyn's excited about the work that they're doing at Pfizer. I think Amazon is a part of a broader solution for a better healthcare experience. Test to treat is but one of them. But that's what we need to be putting our energies towards, not false moral equivalences.
And I think we're just still reeling and trying to get a handle on actually what happened. In terms of the comments online, I will only say that I think all of us are taking a step back and trying to understand what's happening with patients and their experiences. We always do that at Pfizer. I know you do that at Amazon. But clearly, there's a larger dialogue that needs to happen, and we're going to be taking our time to try to understand exactly what happened and understand that feedback and see where we can play a positive role then.
In other news, thousands of residents in Malibu and surrounding areas have been ordered to evacuate as the fire rapidly intensified and threatened homes and communities. Evacuation orders have been expanded throughout the day as the fire moves toward residential neighborhoods. Malibu is home to many celebrities and affluent residents, and several high-end neighborhoods are under threat. At least 7 properties are known to have been destroyed in one of California's most exclusive communities as powerful winds pushed flames through steep canyons. Several major highways and roads, including parts of the Pacific Coast Highway and Highway 101, have been closed due to the fire's proximity and safety concerns. The fire is being fueled by Santa Ana winds, which can reach speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour. These winds not only spread flames quickly, but also make airdrops by helicopters and aircraft more challenging. The wildfire is creating poor air quality throughout Malibu and nearby regions, including areas as far as Los Angeles. Smoke and ash have led to advisories for residents to stay indoors, especially those with respiratory conditions, children, and the elderly. Finally, there were celebrations in the Saudi Arabian capital of Riyadh on Wednesday as the country was rubber-stamped as the host for the 2034 World Cup. As expected, FIFA President Gianni Infantino confirmed the decision following an extraordinary congress held in Switzerland. Saudi Arabia will become the second nation from the Middle East to host the quadrennial tournament, 12 years after neighbors Qatar staged the 2022 edition. The 2034 bid by Saudi Arabia has been criticized because of the country's human rights record and desert climate, much in the same way as the Qatar event. Following the confirmation of Saudi Arabia as hosts of the 2034 World Cup, 21 organizations, including Amnesty International, Saudi Diaspora, human rights organizations, migrant workers groups from Nepal and Kenya, and international trade unions, published a joint statement condemning the move. The kingdom has invested heavily in sport over the last few years, although critics, including women's rights groups and members of the LGBTQ community, allege it is using public investment fund to sports wash its human rights record. The country denies accusations of human rights abuses and says it protects its national security through its laws.
Well, I think controversy will happen in anything you do, and I think that we've learned a lot from their experience, especially in the region, and what they've done. We've been there, we've seen their preparation, so I think we have a good insight on what needs to be done properly from now till 34. I don't think they had that in the past, which is something that will benefit us a lot, and we can assure everyone that we're going to work with all the FIFA member association, with FIFA itself closely, to make sure that the Saudi Football Federation delivers on their expectations. Well, I think the demonstration of what happened in Qatar delivered as the best World Cup so far. I think the matches were excellent, people were happy, and the teams were well prepared. So I don't think that will be an issue. Definitely we can host anytime, because as you know, Saudi is very diverse and there's a lot of locations and so on in terms of climate, and we already host a lot of events throughout the year. So we're prepared for that. Whatever the football community decides on, we're going to be ready for that. Well, in the country, we're developing sports, and we're developing everything for the youth and for a greater future for the kingdom. So if we can deliver on having a greater future for all our kids in the kingdom, I think that will be the legacy that we will love to achieve. And internationally is for everyone to leave Saudi Arabia and think, how can I come back, and I want to come back, or maybe I never want to leave Saudi Arabia. So that will be the ultimate goal, inshallah, to hosting the World Cup in 34.
Prince Al Faisal suggested they would be able to hold the tournament at any time, as the Saudi climate will likely force FIFA to hold the tournament in the Northern Hemisphere winter, just like it did in Qatar. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch up with us again tomorrow at 10 when we bring you The World in 30 minutes, only on World Newsfeed. Follow the Money comes next. Keep it here on Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.